Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit Pluto, square, opposition, or inconjunct one's natal Uranus. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve Pluto, it can be about power, control, transformation, crisis, desire, even obsession and fixation. Now, we're talking about transit Pluto basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Uranus. Well, it may manifest in power. Well, first I want to elaborate on them. Be kind and rewind. When I say basically adverse aspect, of course, squares and oppositions in astrology, those aspects are negative and adverse. But the inconjunct, though it's neutral, can have good and bad qualities. Neutral aspects can have both, and coupled with the fact that an inconjunct aspect can often require an adjustment or a transition. And those things, of course, that can cause some exasperation and tension. So therefore, collectively, basically, I do see this as an adverse transit. Now, going back to the transit. Now, in transit Pluto, again, is basically making an adverse aspect to natal Uranus. Well, it may manifest in power, control, transformation, crisis, desire, and even obsession and fixation. Those things may conflict with one's freedom. It can be, there might be some issues of control, or maybe there might be somebody, your residence as an example, that might be in control. If you got the fourth house involved, say transit Pluto's in the fourth house, it might be inhibiting your own freedom and independence at this time, or you're in a domineering relationship. It can be a situation where it might be somehow challenging, your ability to move forward. Or maybe you just simply feel you don't have the power and control over your freedom and independence at the time of this transit. Now, another thing is that Uranus is also connected with friendships. So it could be a time where you might be dealing with some power struggles with friends at this time. There might be power and control issues with them. The thing is, too, keep in mind, Pluto can be associated with bullying and coercion. So you might be dealing, in some cases, if this is happening with somebody's, it's a child, and say in school at this time, it could be, the person in some cases might be experiencing some bullying from people that are in some kind of group or some gang or what have you. The thing too is, because remember, Uranus is connected with groups, clubs, and organizations, and it can be a time where you might be trying to make deal with a crisis or make a major transformation or change in your life, and it might be something with some group or some club or organization. Those things might be conflicting with it, or vice versa. You might be torn between the two at this time. It might be, if you're dealing with a crisis, that might be inhibiting your own your situation with groups at this time, or even with friendships. Now, Uranus is also associated with our goals and our aspirations. So it might be a time where you might feel like you don't have, maybe the control, to do what you want, what you're aspiring to do at this time. If the natal Uranus is in Aquarius, as an example, it could be goal or aspiration could be connected with astronomy or astrology, aerospace, even rocket science in some cases, innovation, electronics as some examples. Uranus is also connected with the unique, the unorthodox as well. And it might be a time where you might be seeing, it could be someone you're in an intimate connection with, maybe acting a little bit more bizarrely, more so than usual. It could be a situation. Pluto is also could be connected with people that are in insurance, or taxes, or working in a death profession such as a mortician or a funeral director or a coroner. It might be maybe these people are a little bit more, if you know any of these people, or there's some, they're prominent in your life, if they're friends of yours as an example, or if you dealt with them in the past. It could be where you might be seeing some, maybe some unusual behavior from them that you might not quite understand. at this time, and it could be a time too when you look at this transit. Okay, Uranus is also connected with society at this time, and Pluto, the fact that it deals with crisis. You might be dealing with some personal crisis or adversity. It might be making you harder for you to get out into society at this point in time. You might feel torn between your own secrets, being more secretive as opposed to actually ingratiating yourself with others or with groups or what have you at this time. Uranus is also connected with ingenuity and innovation. So it might be a situation where you feel like there might be some, you know, Pluto is about control. You might feel at this time where you might not want to unveil any, if you have any innovative ideas at this time, and it might be inhibiting you from coming out with it. You might just feel at this time to be a little bit more secretive for whatever reasons at this point in time. And the thing about this too is that anatomically speaking, Uranus is connected with the ankles, the calves, the shins, the nerves, and circulation. So considering you're talking about basically an adverse transit, in some cases this may manifest in surgery that you might have to deal with over these issues, and you might have less control over these things at this time. It might be a situation where you might even become overly obsessed with these matters, and maybe it's dominating you feel that it's somehow controlling or dominating your existence more so than usual during this transit. Now, another thing too is that the Uranus is also connected, with computers and astrology. In some cases, Pluto again is about bullying and coercion. There might be a greater propensity for you being, bullied online, or having to deal, maybe there's a computer virus that's causing a lot of difficulty in terms of your internet activity at this time, what you're doing on your computer. It can be a situation, if you're into astrology at this time, you might be feel like there's something, maybe that's controlling your, what you want to do with this to some degree. If you're around people, for example, that are averse to it, are not really, into astrology, you might feel that somehow, there seems to be a control over how much, enjoyment perhaps you could even get as far as your involvement in astrology at this point in time when you have this transit. Now, Uranus is also connected with the future, and this could be a time, in some instances, isolated cases. It could be some trauma. It could be surgery. Pluto is associated with both. That might be, negatively impacting your future. At this point in time, it could be where you're dealing, with some kind of, again, it could be a power struggle with somebody, a control issue. You feel, it's necessary to make, you might not feel you can move on with your future until you make a major change or transformation. As some examples, Uranus is also associated with rebellious behavior. It could be dealing, some cases like, say, if the natal Uranus is in the 5th house, it could be a rebellious child, and it might be harder to control and gain power over this situation at this time. You might be, Pluto is also very destructive energy, and Uranus, of course, is unpredictable. So you put the two together, it's really not a very, good mix, and it might be, something where you might be, you have to be careful at this time that you're not just, lashing out unpredictably, causing some kind of destruction, even if it's just in your home. Say the transit, Pluto is in your 4th house. that's one way that could manifest. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, well, another thing, another way this transit may manifest, it could be where you might become overly obsessed or fixated with trying to attain goals and aspirations. Let's say, for example, if Uranus is in natal Uranus is in Libra, it could be doing something with art or fashion design or something connected with the law or arbitration or negotiation, human resources as some examples. Now, also, too, a crisis you might be dealing with may challenge your future at this time. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal Uranus is in Aquarius, could be a future in astrology or astronomy, computers, innovation, aerospace, even rocket science in some cases, or electronics, aviation. There may also be power struggles at this time, even with friends at this time, or maybe people that were formerly friends. Now, if the natal Uranus is in Capricorn as an example, it could be older friends or ones that are very business-like and career-minded. It might be ones that are just simply looking after, taking care of their own interests. That might be a little bit cold or callous, and this is where a way that transit might pan out. If the natal Uranus is in Capricorn as an example. Now, another thing is that there might, if there's any issues with the colon, prostate, or bladder, those parts are anatomically connected with Pluto. That might challenge your activities in groups, clubs, organizations at this time, just interacting with society in general. Say, for example, if the natal Uranus is in Sagittarius, it could be doing activities in groups or clubs associated with sports or religion, publishing, advertising, exploration as some examples. Another thing too, if you're dealing with a death at this time, it might cause some difficulty in doing something that's Uranus related, such as altruism or astrology or computers or astronomy as some examples. Now, again, going back to surgery as an example, Pluto is associated with surgery. In some isolated cases, this may conflict with your own freedom and independence. Let's say if the natal Uranus is in the 9th house, it might be that freedom perhaps to travel to another country as an example, and it might be harder at this time to control issues that can be associated with your parts that are anatomically connected with Uranus, again, such as the ankles, the shins, calves, lower legs, nerves, and circulation at this time. And anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.